Welcome back to another episode of the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. I am your host, Renze. And if you've been following the show at all, you know that every other episode is a solo episode. And today is just me chatting with you about being who you came to be. And we're going to do a fun little twist here for the next several weeks where we're going to actually be diving in to emotional intelligence traits. So I am a certified emotional intelligence practitioner. After being a self-student of emotional intelligence for years and seeing the important role that it played in leading my sales teams, in my own interpersonal relationships, and my own success, I decided to go ahead and get certified in it just to help further my speaking career, as well as truly connect with audience members and give them those tactical tools and takeaways that they can use to step into their authenticity, elevate their confidence, their self-regard to be who they came to be. You know, I'm a true believer that emotional intelligence, understanding our emotional intelligence, tapping into our emotional intelligence, and then elevating our emotional intelligence is the key to being who we came to be. So much of what we do in life is all in our head. I think that we can all agree that it's usually not lack of talent, lack of desire, lack of opportunity that holds us back. It's our own self-sabotaging beliefs. And that is emotional intelligence, is how do we navigate our thoughts, and then how do we choose to show up regardless of how we feel? So when you look at emotional intelligence as a whole, a lot of EQ traits come to people's mind right off the bat. You know, self-regard, interpersonal relationships, self-awareness. I think I hear people talk about self-awareness a lot when thinking about emotional intelligence. So over the next few weeks, it's going to be kind of like a little course, okay? A little EQ course teaching you some maybe emotional intelligence traits that you didn't really think of, and giving you some tips and tools on how you can lean into that, how you can become more mentally fit and recognize when to use these emotional intelligence traits and how they could help you elevate your success, increase your positive interpersonal relationships, and of course, be who you came to be. So today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite ones, which is reality testing. So there are 18 different EQ traits that we can actually study, that we can lean into. And some of them I feel like play a really big part in our overall success. And reality testing is definitely one of those. You know, here's a reality check. Don't believe everything you think. And I think that this is a really interesting one because we do this every single day. You know, we're constantly trying to decide what is real and what is not. And so much of our perception is our reality, but it's also these stories that we tell ourselves, this reality that we make up in our mind. You know, it's this, I'm sure you guys, if you're anything like me, you've had something similar like this happen to you. A couple of weeks ago, I had sent a text out to a friend. I thought it was a thoughtful message. I hadn't really chatted with her much recently, but I wanted to reach back out to her. And, you know, so I just sent her, it was one of those like, hey, I'm thinking of you. Loved what you posted on social yesterday. Would love to reconnect. And I hit send, and then it was just radio silence, like nothing. I was like, wait, shit, does she have her read receipts on? You know, an hour goes by, nothing. 2 hours, still nothing. The rest of the day, crickets. And of course, my brain went down all the rabbit holes of, gosh, did I say something weird? Maybe she's annoyed with me. Did I misread our last conversation? You know, maybe she's going through something and not telling me. Oh my gosh. And of course, then I went into like full CSI mode, you know, analyzing everything I've ever said and done, stalking her social media to see what's up. And, you know, I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about this, like, what the hell is going on? You know, did I do something? You know, I just kept replaying everything in my head. And finally get back to sleep that night, wake up the next morning to this text. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yesterday was nuts. You know, Susie had a fever. We had to go to urgent care and I crashed. I loved your message. It meant so much to me. I would love to reconnect with you. How are you? And so, yeah, all that energy I put into panicking, completely unnecessary because I forgot to reality test. I forgot to use reality testing in my own text. Just so you know, I always tell you guys that I as just like you, I'm a work in progress. Like I have been studying emotional intelligence for half of my life. I've been certified in it now for 7 years, and I still have to remind myself to stay mentally fit and to really not let my thoughts become truths. So here's what reality testing helps us prevent. It helps us prevent making up stories that absolutely aren't true. Reality testing here's the exact definition for you. It is your ability and tendency to assess the here and now of any situation and compare it objectively to your internal interpretation of it. In other words, what's actually going on versus what stories am I making up? And I think that we all know that we all make up stories all day long. Studies show, I've shared the statistic with you before, that 80% of your thoughts every day are negative, are biased, and repetitive. 80%. That is not a fun stat. That is actually a wake-up call that we have got to elevate our reality testing so that we can see the truth, so that we can see things for what they are. So we need to stop and start pausing and saying, hey, is this actually true? Or is this just some kooky thing that I've made up in my head? Now, I make up some really wacky stories in my head. I mean, there's been times where I've been lying in bed in the middle of the night. I think I hear a sound. I immediately start just coming up with some completely harebrained story about maybe they got in through the basement door. Did we leave that door unlocked? Where would they be going? I mean, I come up with the whole thing to even if there actually is someone in the house, what am I going to do? Which is not reality testing at all. It's called Terra story time. So we see this all the time, and we constantly are telling ourselves stories. You walk by someone, they don't say hi. You actually think they don't like me when maybe they just didn't hear you. You pitch someone, you send the email, crickets, nothing back. You think, it was a bad idea. They're not interested. They don't like me. You see people laughing across the room and you think, oh my God, are they talking about me? Are they looking at me? I have had to do this myself as a keynote speaker. I decided a couple years ago, I was like, I am no longer going to judge my audiences, because every audience is so different. And sometimes I'd be on stage and I would be thinking, like, while I'm delivering the keynote, like, are they digging this? Do they like me? Is this landing? And, what I realize is every audience is so different. It comes into their company culture. Who are they sitting with? Are they new at the company? Is it a mixed gender event? Are they with their company, or are they individuals at an organization? Like, there's so many things that go into it. And there has been times where I have gotten off stage and thought, oh my God, this was not great. And the client comes up to me and was like, you nailed that. You should have seen everyone in this room. No one had their phones out. They were all listening. No one got up to go to the bathroom. People come up afterwards like, oh my God, I love that. And for some reason, I made up some other completely kooky LaRookie story that was not true. So we really have to understand that, again, we're not our thoughts, and we have to use this thing called reality testing to constantly be our gauge to say, is this a truth, or am I making up some nonsense story again? There's so many ways that we can do this, but one of the things that I like to do in emotional intelligence to help people elevate their emotional intelligence is not just say, okay, so start reality testing. It's like, how do we pair that with something else that will help us come up with a clearer vision of whatever is actually going on? So for reality testing, I love to use optimism, which is another emotional intelligence trait. I think that we, all understand what optimism is. It's believing that in the best based on anything that's currently happening. So it's not about having your head in the clouds, or optimism is not about being unrealistic about a situation, but it's believing in the best no matter what is happening. So this is a great emotional intelligence trait to pair with reality testing, because when we're optimistic about something, we aren't going to go down the rabbit hole of the negativity that so many times we do when we are not accurately reality testing. Optimism is not toxic positivity. it's this idea that like, hey, I don't have the full picture here, but I believe this is going to be good. What else could be true? So back to that text I sent when I went down that rabbit hole, I should have just told myself like, oh my gosh, she's probably busy. She probably didn't see it. I know she cares about me. I know this isn't personal. I'm going to go ahead and just follow up tomorrow. I'm not going to give it another thought since. So that's reality testing plus optimism. And it's this combination that really allows you to protect your mental bandwidth and your relationships versus, again, coming up with these kooky laruki stories that really just aren't valid or real at all. We're all guilty of it, right? Are you trying to reach your protein goals without the heavy, chalky, yucky, milky protein shakes? Well, guess what? I have something just for you. Meet my new favorite protein, Clear Protein Plus. This is the protein that thinks it's a lemonade. This protein gives you 20 grams of pure protein, 0 sugar, and just 90 calories. I love it. It's delicious. It keeps me feeling energized, full, and there is 0 bloat. And you guys, I gotta tell you, this is personal. I have known Casey with My Ultimate Edge my entire life. Yes, we grew up in that small town in Kansas together. I trust her. I have used her products for years, and I have seen real results. You guys have to go check out My Ultimate Edge. It is your full body wellness solution, from gut health to hormones to weight loss to protein to energy, and even a new NAD powered sleep routine. I promise you're going to love it as much as I do. Check out the show notes for a link to the Clear Protein Plus, as well as all the other products that I love. So let's look at some of the different situations where reality testing might show up and where you could use it on any given basis. So work. Your manager gives you some short feedback, right? You get the email back, looks good, and you got to reality test it. You got to ask yourself, like, is this how they usually communicate? Did they say something directly to indicate a problem? Maybe they're just busy. Like, so many times we want to finish the story, which instead looks great. If you're really concerned about it, maybe instead of just being like, they think this sucks, and you write the whole narrative, instead, what you do is you reply back and be like, thank you so much. Hey, do you have 10 minutes where we could sit down and go over a couple things in this email? And then you're going to be able to sit face to face and actually assess the situation for exactly what it is versus the stories that you've told yourself. Social media is the perfect one because we actually don't have direct contact with anyone in social media. It is a write it, wait, respond, wait, write it, respond. Like, it's not an ongoing communication. And there's so many other influences that happen on social media, whether it is someone else's comment, whether if they're distracted while they're reading it. We just don't know what's happening. But, it's so interesting. Like, maybe someone that you follow posts this huge win, like some amazing thing has happened to them. And and you read this on a day where maybe you just had a defeat or you're just tired. Like, so many times when we go into these rabbit holes, it's because we are physically or emotionally exhausted. And we start making up the negative stories that really, really don't exist. So, if someone posts something and they're having a big win and it makes you feel worse, first off, I always remind you, you didn't come to be them. You didn't come to be more like them. Like, their story is their story. But reality test it. Be like, do you know the full story? Like, is this just a highlight reel? Is this something they've been working a really, really long time at? And, are you comparing where you're at in the moment to their big win, their big highlight reel? But most of all, a really easy way to reality test in a social media standpoint is, instead of, if you find yourself comparing, try to shift that to admiration. I have found in social media, when we feel that comparison of like, oh shit, I am so behind, I suck, or whatever it is, someone else has posted some major accolade. Give yourself that reframe, that reality test of being like, you know what? I'm actually going to admire this person right now. Like, how amazing. I know that she has been working at this for 8 months, 12 months. I know this was a really huge goal of hers. Wow, how amazing that she was able to do this. Go read through some of the comments. Leave your own comment of admiration of like, hey, Jen, I am so excited for you. This is absolutely amazing. I'm working on a big goal too right now, and you just gave me the fuel that I needed to stay the course and go all in. Jen's probably going to write back like, I got you, girl. Like, go for it. You can do it. Again, it's just reality testing a situation and understanding the role that our feelings can play into it, our thoughts, our ideas, and it's certainly where we're at in any given moment. I use reality testing with my boys as a parent all the time. I have teenagers, I have teenage boys, and my youngest son, Jack, in particular, he was just the most loving, affectionate, snuggle bug of a kid. And he got to middle school and he changed, right? I mean, he's growing into a young man. It would be weird if he was still like some affectionate little kid who wanted to snuggle with mama all the time. Like, weird. That would be weird. But as a mother, that was, there were times where I'm like, oh, Jack doesn't, even I could tell like giving him a hug, he was always kind of like, ugh. Or, just trying to get a lot of information out of him. He just had changed and was quiet. And this was one of those times that I really had to reality test as a parent, that I was like, it's not about me. It's not that, oh, Jack doesn't like me anymore and Jack's too cool for mom or whatever. It was just really understanding who he was at this phase of his life, and then if he was distant, maybe he was tired, maybe he was stressed, maybe he was just an adolescent and was working through things. So I always came up with like different things that I could ask him to talk to him about, and give him that space that he needed without my narrative of what I thought was going on. And I think this is so important in so many of our relationships. We do this, we project our narrative on situations that we really, really know nothing about. So I'm going to end this episode with 4 steps to practice reality testing with optimism. First and foremost, you have the notion of like going into one of your rabbit holes of crazy stories. Just ask yourself, is this true or am I making shit up? Like, really just use that as the gauge. Am I making this up or is this actually a fact? 2, if you need to go to the next level, list what you actually know about the situation. Like, what are the facts? Not the fiction, not the stories that you're telling, but what are the facts of any situation that you know at that point in time? Go ahead and ask yourself, like, okay, I'm making up the story. Like, what else could be going on? Back to the text. It could have been like, maybe she saw it when she was at the grocery store and then just forgot. I've done that. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's traveling. Maybe she's sick. Like, there is a million things other than she didn't want to respond to my text. And then finally is layer in that optimism. Anytime that you find yourself in a negative rabbit hole, throw some optimism into it. What is hopeful and realistic about any perspective that I could take on this? I love to say, I'm going to be realistically optimistic about any given situation. Realistically optimistic, which is that, hey, I'm going to go for the best possible scenario. So with that, here's your little lesson in an emotional intelligence trait reality testing and how you can layer that with optimism to make sure that you aren't living in a world of daydreams and false stories and false narrative. So here's a couple takeaways to remember today. First off, you're not your thoughts. We talk about this all the time on the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. You are not your thoughts. A thought is simply a thought. It's not a truth. And again, 80%, I just have to reiterate this statistic one more time. 80% of your daily thoughts are negative, are biased, and are untrue. So how do you choose to respond to your thoughts? Using that reality testing and optimism to help you navigate it. Emotional intelligence, you guys, it's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Again, I'm an emotional intelligence practitioner. I have studied this. I still find myself in rabbit holes where I have to be like, aha, come back to reality, Tara. This is what you studied. This is what you preach. This is what you talk about. and really understanding like, hey, what is my brain doing? I loved in the episode 1 with Heather White. She said the mind is a wonderful servant, a terrible master. How is your brain serving you? How are your thoughts serving you? Um, and if they're not serving you, change your thoughts. Change your mindset. Tap into that front cortex of your brain where your positive thoughts live that releases that serotonin and dopamine that you need. And this week, I just encourage you to reality test your stories. Sometimes a little reminder for reality testing or emotional intelligence is good. One of the things that I like to do is just put a rubber band around my wrist. And every time I see that rubber band, just give it a little snap. Don't harm yourself. No need to harm yourself, but just give it that little snap of like, okay, I'm going to be emotionally intelligent this week. I'm going to tap into my reality testing, my self-regard, all the different traits. We're going to keep going through these over the next several weeks. And if you are having a negative thought, that little rubber band's a great thing to just be like a little snap and be like, this was just a thought. This is not my reality. What else could be true? What is a truth? So thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you would share it with a friend, if you'd tag it in the stories, if you'd leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to, or if you're watching the show on YouTube. And if you have a reality testing moment that you want to share, I'd love to hear it. So until next time, pause, check the facts, and keep showing up as exactly who you came to be. I'm your host, Tara Renze, and I'll see you next week. Hey there. If you're loving the Be Who You Came to Be podcast and thinking, oh my gosh, my brand would totally vibe with this podcast, well, then guess what? It probably would. And I've got some great news. We have officially opened up our doors and are adding new sponsors to the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. That means your brand could be riding shotgun with me every Friday. Well, what does it include? Think shout outs, reels, emails. It is the works. If you've got a mission that aligns with living authentically, living boldly to your truths, and being who you came to be, slide in to my DMs as I would love to learn more about your brand and how we could partner on the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. Until then, keep shining.